Admiral Zexthera stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Crown, watching the viewscreen display the third planet of this unremarkable star system. The blue and green world spun slowly below them, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Behind him, the massive bridge hummed with activity as officers from a dozen different alien species worked at their stations. Fleet status report, Zexthera commanded, his forearms crossed behind his back in the traditional hegemony pose of authority. Commander Yultan, a reptilian SS Qatar, looked up from his console. All 1,000 ships report ready for formation display, Admiral. The human governments should be detecting us, now. On the planet below, every radar station, space telescope, and satellite suddenly lit up with contacts. The galactic hegemony had arrived, and they wanted to make sure humanity knew it. The fleet was truly magnificent. At the center floated the Dominion's Crown, a ship so large it could house a small city. Its hull gleamed with polished metal that reflected the system's star like a mirror. Weapon ports the size of subway tunnels lined its flanks, each one capable of cracking a moon in half. Surrounding it were the battlecruisers, each one 3 kilometers long and bristling with enough firepower to glass a continent. Beyond them spread the destroyer squadrons, still massive by most standards but dwarfed by their larger cousins. Even the smallest ship in the fleet, a mere frigate, was the size of a skyscraper laid on its side. They arranged themselves in perfect geometric formations that had taken the hegemony's best tacticians years to develop. The sight was designed to inspire awe and, more importantly, immediate surrender. "Sir," Communications Officer Hestera spoke up, her crystalline features glowing softly, "we're receiving transmissions from the surface. Multiple frequencies, dozens of languages. Put the primary human government through," Zexthera ordered. The viewscreen shifted to show a human male in what appeared to be formal clothing. The man looked nervous, but he was trying to hide it. Zexthera had seen this expression 1,000 times before on 100 different worlds. "This is Secretary General Martinez of the United Earth Coalition," the human said. We welcome you to our system. May I ask your intentions?" Zexthera smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "I am Admiral Zexthera of the Galactic Hegemony. Your species has reached a level of technological development that requires guidance. We are here to offer you membership in our great alliance." The word offer was carefully chosen. Every species understood it wasn't really a choice. "What exactly does this membership involve?" Martinez asked. "Standard terms," Zexthera replied smoothly. "You provide resources, troops, and manufacturing capability. In return, you receive our protection and access to advanced technology. Surely you can see the benefits of joining a civilization that can field such a magnificent fleet." He gestured to the viewscreen, which now showed an external view of their formation. The ships hung in space like metallic gods, each one a testament to the hegemony's power. The formations were perfect, with ships spaced at exact intervals that created geometric patterns visible even from the planet's surface. It was a display of precision and overwhelming force that had convinced 300 species to join the hegemony without firing a shot. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "We'll need to discuss this with our governments. Could you give us some time?" "Of course," Zexthera said generously. "You have 6 hours to reach a decision. I trust that will be sufficient." The transmission ended, and Zexthera turned to his bridge crew. "Begin standard first contact procedures. I want detailed scans of their industrial capacity, military assets, and population centers. Also, prepare the demonstration." The demonstration was always the final push that reluctant species needed. A single battlecruiser would destroy an uninhabited moon or asteroid, showing exactly what would happen to any planet that chose resistance over cooperation. It had never failed. "Admiral," Science Officer Kelman called out, "I'm reading something unusual from their outer system." "Define unusual." "Energy signatures, sir. Very faint, but they're there. Multiple contacts moving at high velocity toward the inner system." Zexthera frowned. "Pirates? Mercenaries perhaps?" "Some species do hire outside help for first contact situations." "Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match any known ship designs in our database. How long until they reach us?" "At current velocity, approximately 4 hours, sir." Zexthera nodded. "Continue monitoring. If they're hostile, we'll deal with them after we finish with the humans." one problem at a time. He had no way of knowing that he was about to face the biggest problem of his very long military career. Down on Earth, Secretary General Martinez was in an emergency session with the coalition's military leaders. The meeting room was deep underground, protected by layers of concrete and steel, but everyone knew it wouldn't matter if those ships decided to attack. "What are our options?" Martinez asked. General Chen, the coalition's top military officer, looked grim. "Against 1,000 ships that size? None. Our entire space fleet is maybe 50 vessels, and the largest is a heavy cruiser that's less than half a kilometer long. What about the defense platforms around Earth and Mars? They might take out a few of their smaller ships before being destroyed. We're completely outgunned." Martinez rubbed his temples. "And there's no word from the fleet?" Admiral Torres, head of the coalition navy, shook her head. "The Deep Space Fleet is still 3 days out from the rendezvous point. Even if we sent the recall signal now, they couldn't get back in time. So we surrender," Martinez said quietly. "It might be our only choice," General Chen admitted. "These aliens have technology we can't match. Maybe working with them is better than being destroyed by them." Admiral Torres was quiet for a moment, then spoke up. "There is something else we should consider." "What?" "The fleet that's returning, they've been gone for 6 months. 6 months with the new drive systems, the new weapons, everything we've been developing in secret. If they've been testing it all this time." Martinez looked up sharply. "You think they might have a chance?" "I think," Torres said carefully, "that these aliens have no idea what they're really dealing with. They see our old ships, our public technology, and they assume that's all we have. But the Deep Space Fleet, that's our real navy. You're talking about risking millions of lives on a maybe. I'm talking about not surrendering humanity's freedom without a fight." Martinez was quiet for a long time. Outside, he could see the alien fleet through the room's small window, tiny points of light that represented more firepower than humanity had ever seen. But, somewhere out in the dark, another fleet was coming home. "Send a message to all coalition forces," he finally said. "Tell them to prepare for the worst. And get me a secure line to Admiral Hawthorne." "Sir, she's still in the outer system with the fleet." "Then, we wait. If those aliens want an answer in 6 hours, they're going to get one. I just hope it's not the one they're expecting." Back on the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Zexthera was reviewing the scan results from Earth. The planet was rich in resources, with a population of nearly 8 billion. The humans had decent industrial capacity and showed promise as soldiers and workers. They would make a valuable addition to the hegemony. "Admiral," Commander Yultan reported, "we've completed the demonstration preparations. Target asteroid selected and locked." "Excellent. Has there been any word from those unknown contacts?" "No sir, but they're definitely heading this way. Estimated arrival in 2 hours now." Zexthera was beginning to feel slightly annoyed. Unknown ships approaching during first contact was unusual and unwelcome. "Any response to our standard identification requests?" "None, sir." "Very well. If they want to interfere, they'll discover what happens to those who challenge the hegemony." "How much longer until the humans respond?" 3 hours, sir." Zexthera nodded and settled back in his command chair. 3 hours to wait for the inevitable surrender, then they could deal with whoever was approaching from the outer system. After that, it would be time to begin the integration process. He had no idea that in those 3 hours, everything he thought he knew about warfare was about to change forever. On the outer edge of the system, Admiral Sarah Hawthorne stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching her fleet prepare for the most important battle in human history. Around her, 200 ships moved in perfect coordination, their hulls dark and angular, designed to absorb sensor sweeps rather than reflect them. "Status report," she commanded. "All ships report ready for combat operations, Admiral," her tactical officer replied. "Stealth systems are operating at full efficiency. The enemy fleet still shows no signs of detecting us. What about the aliens surrounding Earth?" 1,000 ships, Admiral. They're maintaining formation approximately 50,000 kilometers above the planet." Hawthorne nodded grimly. The numbers weren't good, but numbers weren't everything. "Signal the fleet. We're going in." The human fleet began to accelerate, their new drive systems pushing them toward Earth at speeds that would have been impossible just a year ago. They moved in complete radio silence, using quantum entanglement communications that were impossible to intercept or detect. Behind them, they left only empty space and the promise of a fight that would determine the future of humanity. Admiral Zexthera was getting impatient. The 6 hours were almost up, and the mysterious contacts from the outer system had finally arrived at the edge of sensor range. What he saw made him pause. Science Officer Kelman confirmed those readings. The insectoid officer's compound eyes glittered as he bent over his console. Confirmed, Admiral. 200 contacts, moving in formation. They're different from anything in our database. Different how? The ships appear to be designed for stealth, sir. Very low sensor profile. If they weren't moving in such a tight formation, we might not have detected them at all. Zexthera's tail twitched in annoyance. Display them on screen. The view screen shifted to show the approaching fleet. Even at maximum magnification, the ships were hard to make out clearly. They were dark, angular vessels that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Unlike the gleaming perfection of hegemony ships, these craft looked deadly and purposeful. Size estimates? Zexthera demanded. Difficult to determine precisely due to their stealth characteristics, but they appear to range from approximately 800 meters to 2 kilometers in length. Commander Yultan looked up from his station. Sir, those are significant vessels, but they're still heavily outnumbered. Our smallest battlecruiser is 3 kilometers long. Zexthera nodded, but something felt wrong. In 5 decades of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. Transmit standard challenge. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came immediately, broadcast on multiple frequencies in perfect galactic standard. This is Admiral Sarah Hawthorne of the United Earth Coalition Navy. You are in violation of Earth territorial space. Withdraw immediately or we will consider your presence an act of war. The bridge fell silent. In 300 conquests, no species had ever issued such a demand to a hegemony fleet. Zexthera's laugh was like grinding metal. Territorial space? Admiral Hawthorne, you seem to misunderstand the situation. We have 1,000 warships. You have 200. Mathematics should make your next course of action obvious. Mathematics, came the human's voice, calm and steady, can be misleading. You have 1,000 ships designed to intimidate primitives. We have 200 ships designed to kill. Impressive words. Let me show you why words don't matter. Zexthera gestured to his weapons officer. Target that asteroid we selected for the demonstration. Maximum power. I want these humans to see what real firepower looks like. The massive main guns of 3 battlecruisers swiveled toward a nearby asteroid, roughly the size of a mountain. When they fired, the beams were visible even in vacuum, brilliant lances of energy that struck the asteroid simultaneously. The rock simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even debris remained. That, Zexthera announced over the communication channel, is what happens to obstacles. I trust this clarifies your position. Admiral Hawthorne's response was immediate and completely unexpected. All ships, weapons free. Target the closest battlecruiser. Show them what human engineering looks like. On the view screen, Zexthera watched as the human fleet suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds. In seconds, they had closed half the distance to his formation, moving faster than any ship had a right to move. Their dark hulls began to glow as weapon ports opened along their sides. Evasive maneuvers. Zexthera shouted. All ships, combat formation. But the hegemony fleet was designed for intimidation, not rapid maneuvering. The massive ships began to ponderous turn toward the threat, their formations breaking apart as captains tried to bring weapons to bear. The humans struck first. The lead human ship, Admiral Hawthorne's flagship, fired a single projectile at the nearest hegemony battlecruiser. To Zexthera's eyes, it looked like nothing more than a tiny speck of metal, insignificant against the massive alien vessel. Then, it hit. The projectile struck the battlecruiser's shields at a significant fraction of light speed. The shields, designed to stop energy weapons and conventional missiles, simply didn't exist as far as the hypervelocity round was concerned. It punched through them like they weren't there, through the hull armor, through the ship itself, and out the other side. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the 3-kilometer battlecruiser broke in half, secondary explosions rippling along its length as internal systems overloaded and ammunition stores detonated. What was that? Zexthara screamed. Mass driver, sir, Science Officer Kelman reported, his voice shaking. They accelerated a projectile to approximately 15% light speed using electromagnetic fields. That's impossible. The power requirements alone, another human ship fired. Then, another. Each shot was a tiny piece of metal moving at unthinkable velocity. Each shot destroyed a hegemony vessel completely. Return fire. Zexthara ordered. All ships, maximum firepower. The hegemony fleet responded with a barrage of energy weapons that lit up space like a small star. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and fusion warheads streaked toward the human ships. And missed. The human vessels moved like living things, dancing between the incoming fire with impossible grace. Their hulls were black not just for stealth, but because they absorbed energy rather than being damaged by it. The few hits that connected seemed to do nothing more than make the ships glow slightly brighter. Sir, Communications Officer Hestera called out, we're receiving a transmission from the human admiral. Put it through. Admiral Hawthorne's face appeared on the screen, calm despite the battle raging around her ship. Admiral Zexthara, you are clearly outmatched. Order your fleet to stand down and withdraw from this system. Never. Zexthara snarled. We have numerical superiority. You have numerical targets, Hawthorne corrected. Your ships are designed to intimidate and occupy. Ours are designed to fight and win. This is your last chance to avoid unnecessary loss of life. To emphasize her point, another human ship fired its mass driver. The round punched through 2 hegemony destroyers, destroying both with a single shot. Zexthara felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, genuine fear. But he was a hegemony admiral, and surrender was not in his vocabulary. All ships, ramming speed. Close to point-blank range. They can't use those weapons if we're too close. It was a desperate tactic, but it might work. The human mass drivers needed distance to accelerate their projectiles. In close combat, the hegemony's energy weapons would have the advantage. Or so he thought. As his ships closed the distance, the human vessels simply changed. Weapon ports along their hulls opened to reveal not the expected energy cannons, but something far worse, launch tubes for something the humans called torpedoes. These weren't the simple explosive missiles that most species used. These were self-guided weapons that burned with their own fusion reactions, each one powerful enough to damage a battlecruiser. And the humans launched them in swarms. Hundreds of the weapons streaked through space, weaving between hegemony ships with artificial intelligence that predicted where targets would be rather than where they were. The hegemony point defense systems, designed to stop conventional missiles, were overwhelmed in seconds. The torpedoes struck home with devastating effect. Each fusion warhead carved chunks out of hegemony vessels, and there were so many of them that even the largest battlecruisers began to break apart under the assault. Sir, Commander Yultan reported, his voice tight with panic, we've lost 18 ships. The humans have taken no casualties. None, sir. Their shields are unlike anything we've encountered. They seem to convert incoming energy into power for their own systems. On the viewscreen, Zexthara watched as another of his battlecruisers died, torn apart by human weapons that defied everything he thought he knew about space combat. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen, with a combination of advanced technology and tactical brilliance that made his own forces look like children playing with toys. Sir, Science Officer Kelman called out, I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the human flagship. What kind of energy? Unknown, sir. It's unlike anything in our database. Admiral Hawthorne's voice came over the communication channel again. Admiral Zexthara, you have 10 seconds to order a general retreat. If you don't, I'll demonstrate why humanity earned its place among the stars. What are you talking about? You wanted to see our fleet. You wanted to see what we're capable of. But you still haven't seen our real weapons. Zexthara felt his blood turn cold. Real weapons? The mass drivers and fusion torpedoes weren't their real weapons? 5 seconds, Admiral. Zexthara looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. Behind them, the view screen showed his fleet dying ship by ship against an enemy that fought like demons. "Sir?" Commander Yultan prompted. 2 seconds. Zexthara closed his eyes. In his mind, he could hear the voices of 300 conquered species, all those who had surrendered without a fight when faced with hegemony power. Now he understood how they felt. 1 second. "All ships," he said quietly, "stand down and withdraw to minimum safe distance." The human admiral's response was immediate. "Withdrawal acknowledged. Your surviving vessels will be escorted to the edge of the system." As his defeated fleet limped away from Earth, Zexthara realized that everything had changed. The hegemony had always been the strongest force in the galaxy, the ultimate authority that all species had to respect. But now there was something stronger. And it was human. 3 days later, Admiral Zexthara sat in the communication chamber of his flagship, preparing for what would be the most difficult conversation of his career. The surviving ships of his fleet hung in space at the edge of the Sol system, licking their wounds and trying to understand what had happened. The casualties were devastating. Of his 1,000 ships, over 200 were completely destroyed, and another 300 were so damaged they could barely maintain life support. The humans, on the other hand, had not lost a single vessel. "Admiral," Communications Officer Hestera announced, "we have a secure connection to High Command." The view screen flickered to life, showing the imposing figure of Supreme Admiral Korthax, leader of all hegemony forces. The ancient warrior scaled hide-bore scars from a dozen campaigns, and his 6 eyes held the wisdom of 5 centuries of conquest. "Report," Korthax commanded in his gravelly voice. "Supreme Admiral," Zexthara began, his throat dry, "I must report a significant tactical defeat. The human fleet proved to be unexpectedly capable." Define unexpectedly capable. Zexthara transmitted the battle recordings without comment. For several minutes, Supreme Admiral Korthax watched in silence as the human ships tore through hegemony forces with weapons and tactics that defied conventional understanding. "Explain this," Korthax finally said, his voice deadly quiet. "The humans possess technology far beyond their apparent development level. Their mass acceleration weapons can penetrate any known shield system. Their propulsion allows for maneuverability that our ships cannot match. And their defensive systems seem to convert incoming energy attacks into additional power. How is this possible? Our intelligence indicated they were barely capable of interstellar travel. That intelligence was apparently based on their civilian technology. Their military vessels are completely different. According to my science officers, they represent several technological leaps beyond our current capabilities." Supreme Admiral Korthax was quiet for a long time. "Admiral Zexthara, in 300 years of expansion, the hegemony has never faced defeat in a first contact scenario. We have overwhelmed primitive species and absorbed advanced ones through superior numbers. What you're describing suggests these humans are neither." "No, sir. They fight like a species that has been preparing for galactic warfare for generations. But they're newly spacefaring. Our long-range scouts confirmed they only developed faster-than-light travel within the last few decades." Zexthara hesitated. "Supreme Admiral, I believe our scouts may have been observing their civilian technology only. The military fleet that engaged us appears to represent their true capabilities. Are you suggesting they deliberately hid their strength?" "I'm suggesting that these humans understand the nature of galactic politics better than we gave them credit for. They knew we were coming long before we arrived." On the screen, Supreme Admiral Korthax's expression grew thoughtful. "Show me the engagement again. Focus on their tactical patterns." Zexthara replayed the battle, highlighting the human fleet's movements. The enemy ships had fought with a precision and coordination that spoke of extensive training and preparation. More importantly, they had adapted their tactics in real time as the battle progressed. "They learn quickly," Korthax observed. "Yes, sir. And they're not finished with us." "Explain." "The human admiral, Sarah Hawthorne, has requested a formal meeting. She wants to discuss terms." "Terms? They defeated our advance fleet and now they want to negotiate?" "Supreme Admiral, based on what I observed, I don't think that was their advance fleet. I think that was a patrol squadron." The implications of that statement hung in the air like a poison cloud. If 200 human ships could destroy a quarter of a hegemony battle fleet, what could their main forces accomplish? What are their demands? Korthax asked. They want to meet face-to-face, on neutral ground. Admiral Hawthorne specified that they're prepared to discuss the future relationship between humanity and the galactic hegemony. Future relationship. As if they have a choice in the matter. Sir, with respect, after what I've seen, I think they do have a choice. And I think we need to be very careful about what choice they make. Supreme Admiral Korthax studied the battle recordings once more. Very well. Arrange the meeting. But, Admiral Zexthera, you will not negotiate from a position of weakness. The hegemony has fleets that dwarf what you brought to Earth. Make sure these humans understand that. Yes, sir. And, Admiral, find out everything you can about their real capabilities. If they're as dangerous as you suggest, the High Council needs to know. The transmission ended, leaving Zexthera alone with his thoughts and the weight of possible galactic war. Admiral Sarah Hawthorne stood on the bridge of the Defiance, reviewing intelligence reports from across human space. The victory over the hegemony fleet had been satisfying, but it was only the beginning. She knew that somewhere in the galaxy, alien leaders were planning their response. Admiral, her intelligence officer reported, were receiving long-range communications from our deep space monitoring stations. The hegemony has significant military assets throughout the local spiral arm. How significant? Conservative estimates put their total fleet strength at over 50,000 vessels, spread across hundreds of systems. Hawthorne nodded grimly. She had expected something like this. What about our assets? Total coalition fleet strength is approximately 2,000 ships, with another 500 under construction. However, our technological advantages may offset the numerical disparity. May offset. That's not exactly reassuring. Her tactical officer looked up from his console. Admiral, there's something else. Our quantum listening posts are detecting increased hegemony communications traffic. It appears they're mobilizing additional fleets. How long do we have? Unknown. But, based on the communication patterns, we estimate they could have a major force here within 6 months. Hawthorne walked to the viewscreen, looking out at the stars. Humanity had always known this day would come. For decades, they had prepared for the inevitable contact with galactic civilization. But, knowing it was coming and actually facing it were two very different things. Signal the hegemony fleet, she ordered. Tell Admiral Zexthera I'm ready for that meeting. The meeting took place on a small asteroid between Earth and Mars, in a temporary habitat that both sides could reach easily. Admiral Hawthorne arrived with a small escort of human ships, while Admiral Zexthera brought a similar force of hegemony vessels. The habitat itself was a marvel of human engineering, constructed in less than 12 hours using advanced fabrication technology. It provided a neutral meeting ground with atmosphere suitable for both human and hegemony physiology. Admiral Zexthera studied the human admiral as they sat across from each other in the habitat's main conference room. Hawthorne was smaller than he had expected, but her eyes held a sharpness that reminded him of a predator evaluating prey. Or perhaps it was the other way around. Admiral Hawthorne, he began formally, I must commend your forces on their tactical proficiency. It has been many years since the hegemony faced such capable opposition. Thank you, Hawthorne replied. Your own forces fought bravely, even when facing superior technology. Superior technology, Zexthera repeated. Yes, that's what I wanted to discuss. Where did humanity acquire such advanced capabilities? We developed them ourselves. That's impossible. Our scouts have monitored this system for decades. You were barely capable of chemical propulsion when we first detected you. Hawthorne smiled slightly. Admiral, let me ask you something. When your scouts observed us, what exactly did they see? Primitive spacecraft, limited industrial capacity, chemical and nuclear technology. Did they see our military installations? What military installations? Your species had no significant military presence in space. That you could detect, Hawthorne corrected. Admiral, humanity has been aware of galactic civilization for over a century. We've been preparing for contact for just as long. Zexthera felt a chill run down his spine. How? We're good at listening. Your species, and dozens of others, have been broadcasting across the galaxy for millennia. We learned your languages, studied your technology, and understood your methods long before you knew we existed. And, you prepared for war. We prepared for survival. In every case study we analyzed, first contact with the galactic hegemony followed the same pattern: overwhelming force, followed by demands for submission. We decided early on that we would not follow that pattern. Zexthera was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. You're saying you deliberately hid your true capabilities. We had our civilian population and infrastructure visible, while keeping our military development completely hidden. Every advanced facility is either underground, in deep space, or cloaked beyond your detection capability. But, the resources required for such development are available when an entire species is working toward the same goal. Admiral, you've seen what 200 of our ships can do. Would you like to guess how many more we have? Zexthera felt his earlier fears crystallizing into certainty. You're threatening the hegemony. I'm informing you that the hegemony's standard operating procedure will not work with humanity. We will not submit, and we cannot be conquered by force. The question is, what happens next? The hegemony has thousands of ships. The hegemony has thousands of ships designed to intimidate primitives and fight other hegemony ships, Hawthorne interrupted. We have ships designed to kill. There's a difference. Zexthera studied the human admiral's face. She wasn't bluffing. Everything about her manner suggested complete confidence in her species' ability to fight a galactic war. What are you proposing? He asked. A new relationship. Not conquest, not submission, but partnership. The galaxy is a big place, Admiral. There's room for more than one dominant power. The High Council will never accept that. Then, the High Council will learn what every human child knows, that some fights aren't worth winning. Hawthorne stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Admiral Zexthera, you have a choice to make. You can report back to your superiors that humanity is a threat to be eliminated, in which case you'll face the full weight of our military. Or you can report that we're a potential ally worth courting. And, if I choose the first option? Hawthorne's smile was cold as space. Then, you'd better bring everything you have. Because we certainly will. As the human admiral left the conference room, Zexthera realized that the galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. 2 weeks after the meeting with Admiral Hawthorne, Admiral Zexthera found himself standing before the High Council of the Galactic Hegemony. The massive chamber was carved from a single asteroid and could hold representatives from all member species. Today, it held the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and they were not pleased. Supreme Admiral Korthax stood at the central podium, his ancient form commanding attention from every corner of the chamber. Around him, the circular tiers held hundreds of council members representing dozens of species, all united under hegemony rule. Admiral Zexthera, Supreme Admiral Korthax began, his voice echoing through the chamber, you have presented this council with a most disturbing report. Explain again, for the record, how a single human fleet defeated a hegemony battle group. Zexthera stepped forward, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. Honored Council, the human military possesses technology that exceeds our current capabilities in several key areas. Their mass acceleration weapons can penetrate any known shield system. Their propulsion systems provide maneuverability advantages that make conventional tactics obsolete. Most significantly, their defensive systems appear to convert incoming energy into usable power. Councillor Vexhai, a tall, crystalline being from the Zephyr Collective, spoke up. You're describing impossibilities. No single species could achieve such technological leaps without outside assistance. With respect, Counselor, that's exactly what they did achieve. According to Admiral Hawthorne, humanity has been monitoring galactic communications for over a century, learning from our own technological advances. Learning? Counselor Thraxon of the Brutus Empire laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You mean stealing? No primitive species develops such capabilities independently. Supreme Admiral Korthax raised a hand for silence. The method is less important than the result. Admiral Zexthera, what is your assessment of human military strength? Based on what I observed, the fleet that engaged us was likely a patrol force, not their main battle fleet. The humans claim to have been preparing for galactic contact for decades. If true, their total military capability could be substantial. The chamber erupted in angry voices from dozens of species. The idea that a newly spacefaring race could challenge hegemony supremacy was unthinkable to most council members. Silence. Korthax commanded. Admiral, what were the human demands? They request recognition as an independent power and establishment of formal diplomatic relations. Admiral Hawthorne was very clear that they will not accept hegemony membership under standard terms. Counselor Prime Yulfes of the Admiral Zexthera stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Universal Dominance, watching his fleet prepare for what the High Council had declared would be humanity's final lesson. Around him, 5,000 hegemony warships moved in perfect formation, the largest military force ever assembled for a single conquest. The fleet was truly magnificent. At its heart were 50 dreadnoughts, each one capable of cracking planets. Surrounding them were 300 battlecruisers, 1,000 destroyers, and thousands of support vessels. It was enough firepower to sterilize 100 worlds. Fleet status report, Zexthera commanded. All ships report combat ready, Admiral, replied his new second-in-command, Captain Drelkar. Estimated arrival at Earth in 6 hours. Any sign of the human fleet? Long-range sensors detect approximately 400 human vessels in the outer system. They appear to be maintaining defensive positions. Zexthera nodded, but felt uneasy. 400 ships was twice what the humans had deployed before, but it was still hopelessly outnumbered against his force. Yet something about Admiral Hawthorne's confidence during their last meeting continued to trouble him. Admiral, his science officer reported, were receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Display it. Admiral Hawthorne appeared on the view screen, standing on the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, Zexthera could see human crew members working calmly at their stations, showing no signs of fear despite the overwhelming odds they faced. Admiral Zexthera, Hawthorne said formally, I see you've brought friends. Admiral Hawthorne, you are facing the combined might of the galactic hegemony. 5,000 ships stand ready to enforce the Council's will. This is your final opportunity to surrender and accept hegemony membership. Hawthorne smiled, and Zexthera felt his uneasiness grow. Admiral, I appreciate the impressive display. Truly magnificent ships. But, I'm afraid your intelligence about human capabilities remains incomplete. 400 ships cannot stand against 5,000, regardless of technological advantages. You're absolutely right, Hawthorne agreed. 400 ships would be insufficient. Fortunately, we have rather more than that. Before Zexthera could ask what she meant, his science officer began shouting warnings. Admiral. Massive energy signatures throughout the system. Unknown contacts materializing everywhere. On the tactical display, the Sol system suddenly lit up with new contacts. Ships began appearing as if materializing from empty space, their stealth systems deactivating in perfect coordination. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of vessels revealed themselves. Contact count now at 8,000 ships and climbing, his science officer reported, his voice cracking with stress. That's impossible. Captain Drelkar exclaimed. Where were they hiding? Admiral Hawthorne's voice came over the communication channel. Admiral Zexthera, meet the true United Earth Coalition Navy. We've been preparing for this day for a very long time. The human fleet was unlike anything Zexthera had ever seen. The ships were sleek, predatory designs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with organic fluidity, forming attack patterns that flowed like living things through space. Sir, his tactical officer called out, the human ships are arranging themselves in a sphere formation around our fleet. Zexthera realized with growing horror that his magnificent armada was now completely surrounded. How many ships are we facing? Current count, 12,000 contacts, sir. And, they're still revealing more. On the view screen, Admiral Hawthorne continued speaking as if discussing the weather. You see, Admiral, we took your people's expansion methods to heart. While you were conquering and absorbing existing civilizations, we were building. Every asteroid, every moon, every hidden location throughout our system has been converted into ship construction facilities. 12,000 ships, Zexthera whispered. Oh, that's just our home defense fleet, Hawthorne replied casually. Would you like to see what we've prepared for offensive operations? New contacts began appearing on the long-range sensors. Massive constructs that dwarfed even hegemony dreadnoughts were emerging from behind planets and moons. These weren't ships in any conventional sense, they were mobile battle stations, each one the size of a small city. Admiral, his science officer reported, his voice barely steady, those large contacts, they're generating energy readings comparable to entire fleets. Fortress ships, Hawthorne explained helpfully. We based the design on your own dreadnoughts, but we made some improvements. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize a continent and enough manufacturing capability to build its own escort fleet. Zexthara felt the last of his confidence evaporating. What do you want? The same thing we wanted 2 weeks ago. Recognition of human independence and establishment of formal diplomatic relations. However, our terms have changed somewhat. Changed how? Originally, we were prepared to coexist peacefully with the hegemony. Now, having seen your response to our reasonable requests, we've decided that the current galactic power structure needs adjustment. Adjustment? The hegemony has had a long and successful run as the dominant galactic power. But success breeds complacency, and complacency breeds weakness. You've grown used to intimidating primitives and absorbing their resources without facing real opposition. Admiral Hawthorne paused, and, when she continued, her voice was cold as vacuum. That ends today. You're declaring war on the entire hegemony? War? No, Admiral. War implies some degree of equality between opposing forces. What we're implementing is a galactic restructuring program. Across the system, the human fleet began to move. But, instead of attacking, they were forming into larger groups, their ships linking together in ways that defied Zexthara's understanding of fleet tactics. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human ships appear to be combining their power systems. Energy readings are increasing exponentially. Admiral Hawthorne, your fleet is impressive, but you cannot fight the entire galaxy. The hegemony has member species across thousands of systems. Had, Admiral. Past tense. What do you mean? 3 minutes ago, simultaneous attacks began on every major hegemony military installation within 200 light-years of Earth. We call it the Prometheus Protocol. The blood drained from Zexthara's face. Simultaneous attacks? That's impossible. You'd need faster-than-light communication and coordination across hundreds of systems. Quantum entanglement communication networks, Hawthorne explained. We've been setting them up for decades. Every major hegemony world has been under observation by human deep space forces. We know where your shipyards are, where your command centers are located, and where your fleets are based. Sir, his communications officer called out urgently. We're receiving emergency transmissions from across hegemony space. Massive attacks on Kepler Station, the Rigel shipyards, the Centauri command center. The reports kept coming. One after another, critical hegemony installations were going dark. Shipyards that had built vessels for centuries were being destroyed. Command centers that had coordinated the conquest of hundreds of worlds were under assault. How is this possible? Zexthara demanded. Simple mathematics, Admiral. You have 50,000 ships spread across 2,000 systems. We have 20,000 ships concentrated into strike forces targeting your most important installations. Local superiority, applied simultaneously across your entire territory. Admiral Hawthorne's image leaned forward slightly. Admiral Zexthara, your people made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that because humanity was new to galactic civilization, we were naive about galactic warfare. But, we've been studying warfare for our entire existence. It's what we do. Sir, Captain Drelkar whispered urgently, we're receiving a general recall order from High Command. All fleets are ordered to return to defend home systems immediately. Tell them we're surrounded by 12,000 enemy ships and cannot comply, Zexthara replied numbly. Admiral Hawthorne smiled again. Actually, Admiral, you can comply. We're not going to destroy your fleet. You're not? Destroying you would serve no purpose. Instead, you're going to serve as our ambassadors. Ambassadors? You're going to return to what's left of the High Council and deliver humanity's new terms for galactic peace. What terms? Complete hegemony withdrawal from all conquered territories. Independent sovereignty for all member species. Reparations for 3 centuries of forced occupation. And formal recognition of the United Earth Coalition as the galaxy's new peacekeeping authority. Zexthara stared at the human admiral in shock. You want us to surrender unconditionally. Surrender? No, Admiral. Surrender implies you still have the capacity to fight. What we want is acknowledgement of the new galactic reality. Around them, human ships continued their coordinated movements, forming patterns that turned the entire star system into a single massive weapon. The combined energy output of 12,000 vessels was beginning to affect local spacetime, creating distortions visible to the naked eye. And if the High Council refuses these terms? Admiral Hawthorne's expression became deadly serious. Then, we finish what we started today. Every hegemony world. Every hegemony ship. Every hegemony installation. Total extinction of your civilization. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about consequences. For 300 years, the hegemony has conquered, enslaved, and exploited other species. You've destroyed civilizations and erased cultures. Now you face a species that's stronger than you are. She paused, letting that sink in. The difference is, we're giving you a choice. Surrender your empire and live, or fight us and die. The hegemony never gave anyone that option. Zextara looked around his bridge at officers who had served with him for decades. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders that could determine the fate of their entire civilization. Admiral Hawthorne, he said finally, I will deliver your message to the High Council. Excellent. Your fleet is free to leave. You have one standard month to provide your answer. As the hegemony fleet began its long journey home, Zextara realized that the galaxy had indeed been restructured. The age of hegemony dominance was over, and the age of humanity had begun. Behind them, 12,000 human ships settled into patrol patterns around their home system, ready to defend the world that had just become the galaxy's new capital.